This video is to report to you on some recent preamp developments I've been undertaking. But first, a little bit of background. There are many audiophiles and dealers who view what I call the audiophile attributes as the primary objectives of the sound you're trying to achieve with your home stereo system. These audiophile attributes are popularized by the magazines, the J. Gordon Holt glossary from way back when. Things such as detail, clearly delineated sonic images, slam, extension of the frequency extremes, low noise floor, black backgrounds. These are many of the terms we see when we read reviews in the magazines, and many of the things we're told when we go to high-end dealer stores, and many of the things we think about and talk amongst ourselves. The philosophy of aiming for your particular preferences among these kinds of sonic attributes is totally fine. It just doesn't happen to be my personal approach. I am a single issue voter in this hobby. My only criteria is, does it sound more or does it sound less like Stevie Nicks is singing to me in my living room? That's all I care about. I don't care about detail. I don't care about bass slam. I don't care about extension of the frequency extremes. All I care about is what I describe as emotional engagement. Is the system making us cry or laugh in response to the music we love? That's how I think of it myself personally. There are lots of different ways to think of it, but that's how I think of it. And so that is my North Star during the course of this line stage search. I have had for 2 years now the VTL TL 7.5 Series 3 line stage preamp. I think it's a wonderful preamp. I like it very, very much. I've enjoyed it very, very much. But it is a solid-state output stage. It's a hybrid preamp. And I began to wonder if I could get greater liquidity in the mid-range, a greater of what I call breath of life. A greater breath of life. Does it sound like there's a living, breathing singer singing to me in the room? Does the component do a little bit less of that or a little bit more of that? That's my criteria. A new friend of mine, Robs, to whom I was introduced by my friends in Northern California, Kurt and Mike, he brought over his Hovland HP100. The Hovland HP100, circa like the 2000s, was a very popular preamp, raved about by Harry Pearson and the Absolute Sound. It's pretty much kind of long forgotten about. It was very popular back in the day, and it actually has still held its value pretty well in the used market. So he was looking for one and he found it. He brought it over, and we compared the HP100 directly to the VTL. I think the VTL surpassed the Hovland in the typical audiophile attribute categories: greater detail, slightly more resolving, greater extension of the frequency extremes. But I heard the Hovland as sounding a little bit more liquid, a little bit more breath of life on female vocals. And I was pretty impressed and struck by that. This 20 or 25-year-old preamp was sounding a little bit more organic to me than my beloved VTL. So that launched me on a search for other tube preamps. Along the way, I sold the VTL preamp and replaced it temporarily with a Hegel P30A line stage preamp that I have in inventory here. I'm nominally a Hegel dealer, but Brad has every reason to be mad at me because I haven't been doing any dealing. But I have the preamp here, and I pressed it into service for the first time, and it actually sounds very good. I got involved with the Hegel line only because it seemed to have very good amplifiers and seemed to have a good line stage at a very reasonable price. So the thinking there was that would be a good, high-value, good sound quality per dollar choice for people at a very modest cost. So I have had this preamp here, never tried it. I put it into service, and it sounds very good. No problems with it at all. Compared to the VTL, I would say it didn't have quite the transparency and resolution of the VTL, but it held its own very, very well, and I think it's a perfectly good preamp, especially at that price. However, more exciting to me because I'm a tube guy, I was loaned by Gary Leeds of Hear This a Trafomatic Lara preamp. The Trafomatic is actually a brand I'm familiar with back to 2015 because one of my favorite systems I've ever heard at Munich was driven by the Trafomatic Elysium amplifier. If you've ever seen this thing, it looks like a compact fusion reactor with a iMac 250 tube, and it's a gigantic 70-watt SET amplifier, which was often used by the Tune audio designer for his exhibits at Munich. So that's where I first saw the Elysium around 2015. I've always loved crazy looking SET amps, so I looked into it a little bit, and it turns out it's designed by Sasha Chokic. Sasha, I apologize for butchering the pronunciation of your last name, but Sasha Trafomatic in Serbia. The other main Serbian company is Dejan's NAT Audio. So two great tube audio companies in Serbia. I was always curious about the Elysium, and my very dear friend Jeroen in the Netherlands has the Elysiums and has had them for several years. I've heard them twice in his house with the Elysiums on his Cesaro Zetas, so I've got some familiarity with Trafomatic. So Gary says, try this all-tube preamp, and I'm thinking, since the VTL was a hybrid, basically a solid-state preamp on the output stage, maybe I could pick up a little bit of breath of life by switching to an all-tube preamp. When you're thinking organic mid-range and liquidity and breath of life, Jadis comes to mind. So I have been very seriously looking into getting a Jadis JPS2 single-ended all-tube preamp. I've been having this Lara sitting here, so I pressed it into service 3 days ago. I didn't know what to expect because I didn't know what Sasha does in the line stage preamp realm. I know that I have great respect for his Elysium. The Lara seems very good. The Lara seems to have right off the bat what I call a ground-up frequency balance, which I also synonymously describe as a low center of gravity frequency balance. It's not like a solid-state amplifier or line stage frequency balance where it's kind of floating and kind of focused in the tilted up mid-range to treble area. I like a frequency balance that is grounded in the lower frequencies, where the music sweeps up from the bottom, doesn't kind of float down from the top, if that makes any sense at all. Anyway, so far, I'm pretty impressed with this thing. It seems to have pretty much the detail of any of these other preamps. I think it puts me a little bit further on the breath of life spectrum than the solid state Hegel did, or even the VTL did. And so far, I am really enjoying this thing. It really seems to have a foundational frequency balance that just appeals to me personally. And interestingly, the Six Moons review of the Lara, when I went back and read it, said very much the same thing. It focused on the kind of foundational frequency balance and dense weight and tonality of the Lara, and that's exactly what I personally look for. So far, I'm pretty interested in continuing to try this Lara. Does that make me lose interest in the Jadis? Not really, although my friend Jim is going to have a heart attack if I buy a preamp that I have to walk over and twist 2 volume control knobs to change the volume on. He keeps harassing me about this. But putting that to one side, I had the I.O. with 2 attenuators my whole life, and I always had to get up and twist the attenuator knob, so the lack of a remote is not that big a deal for me. So it doesn't disqualify the JPS2 for me personally, but I'm enjoying the Lara so much, I'm not sure if experimenting with the JPS2 even makes sense. What are your thoughts? Do you guys have any experience with Jadis preamps? Please let me know. Bye-bye.